Good evening, residents of Everett, Washington. I'd like to call to order the Everett City Council meeting of November 9th, 2022, and welcome our guests here in the council chambers this evening. The council is conducting our weekly meeting in a hybrid mode. This allows us to reach members of our community who wish to participate via Zoom or those who wish to attend in person in the chambers. We hope to continue this format to be as accessible as possible to our community. For those who wish to participate in the future via Zoom, you may find the public comment registration form on the City of Everett website under the City Council Department. Click on the register here to provide comment via Zoom link, and you'll come to a form that you need to fill out. After you submit the form, you'll receive an email confirmation with the Zoom link and the phone number to the meeting. Participants must submit the form at least 30 minutes prior to the meeting. Forms submitted after that time will not receive the Zoom link and phone number to speak, but may still participate the day of the meeting by coming in person. Please note, we do not allow comments on any kind of campaigning, whether for or against ballot measures or candidates running for office. We also do not accept comments focused solely on personal matters that are unrelated to city business. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Franklin.
Here.
Vice President Dewey.
Excused.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Vogely.
Here.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Here.
Councilmember Fosse.
Here.
Councilmember Schwab.
Here.
President Stonecipher.
Here. Councilmember Zarlingo, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'd like to ask Councilmember Vogely, will you please read the land acknowledgement?
The City Council wishes to acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Shtahoksh people, and their successors, the Tulalip tribes. Since time immemorial, they have hunted, fished, gathered on, and taken care of these lands and waters. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. We will strive to be honest about our past mistakes and bring about a future that includes their people, stories, and voices to form a more just and equitable society.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes of the November 2nd, 2022 meeting?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from last week. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Franklin.
Good evening, President Stonecipher. I have a few items tonight, so I apologize in advance for the length of my comments. But first, I'd like to recommend to the Everett Planning Commission Alex Lark for alternate position 1 for November 9th through 2022, December through December 31st, 2026, to the Planning Commission as an alternate, and I would love to see us move that forward.
Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan moves appointment of Alex Lark to the alternate 1 position.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
Alex is great. Welcome. Would like to welcome him back to the States too, and glad to see that he's getting diving in deep to help us out here at the city. So glad to see this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely.
Ditto that, and also just to hopefully start to be able to recognize the people that we appoint more regularly out loud and with purpose.
Great. Councilmember Fosse.
I just wanted to second Councilmember Ryan's comments and thank him for stepping up.
Great. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan.
Definitely.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab.
Yes.
President Stonecipher.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you, Alex Lark, for his service. He stepped away from the Planning Commission to serve in the reserves. So next, I just wanted to let everyone know that nominations are open for the Mayor's Went Art Awards, and those close on November 30th. So please look online for organizations to nominate for the art awards. And then Wintertide is coming up. It definitely became winter overnight, as we all experienced. So Wintertide is a great way to celebrate that. And it will begin on Friday, November 25th, the day before Thanksgiving. Downtown Everett Shop Small event will be on the 26th, and just look for fun notices on the Wintertide events that are coming in December. And then lastly, I have a proclamation for Veterans Day. Before I give the proclamation, I just want to first thank all of our team members. Obviously, I thank everyone in the community who's served in the armed forces, but we have a large number of staff at the City of Everett who have served in the armed forces, who are veterans, who are actually also still serving in the reserves. And I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for their service to our country and to our city and our community. And then I'd like to read a proclamation in honor of Veterans Day. So, whereas November is a time for expressing our gratitude and reflecting on all we are thankful for, it is a time we dedicate to honoring the contributions and sacrifices of those who have served in the armed forces to preserve the freedoms that we hold dear. And we also recognize November as National Veterans and Military Families Month, in which we pay homage to our military families, caregivers, and the survivors of our veterans and service members for everything they have done and continue to do in support of those who have served and those who are currently serving, and our community and nation. And whereas there are over 18 million veterans and 2.3 million active duty and reserve service members in the United States, and the City of Everett is proud to have many veterans and reserve service members working within our departments, performing essential duties that help so many of us throughout the city. And we want to thank these employees for their bravery, selflessness, and willingness to put themselves in harm's way to protect our liberties. And whereas our city's history and its development have been greatly shaped by its connections to the U.S. Armed Forces, including Painfield Airport's usage during war times and Naval Station Everett, and military service has brought many families to our area, both temporarily and permanently, and we thank these families for their contributions, sacrifices, and ongoing support for our service members and the many other ways they've enriched our community. Now, therefore, I, Cassie Franklin, Mayor of the City of Everett, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2022 as Veterans Day and the month of November as Veteran and Military Families Month in Everett to honor our veterans and our current service members and their families. So thank you, and I just, again, want to thank all of our veterans in our community, and especially a big thank you to everyone who is working in the City of Everett who is also a veteran. Thank you. And with that, I have no further comments tonight.
Thank you. Angie, do we have anyone signed up to speak this evening for public comment?
Good evening, President Stonecipher. We have a few people through Zoom and in chambers. First, we have a written comment from Ryan Weber, and that has been provided to council administration and to the clerk to be part of permanent record. And we are going to start with our virtual public comments. And so, Joe, you're familiar with this, and we're going to have a timer on for you for 3 minutes so you can visually see where you are at. So just one moment. Once you see the clock, then you can start. One moment, Joe. We are not hearing you. No. Okay, you can, he's talking, but I'm not hearing anything. Joe, can you say something? Sorry, just a moment.
You hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Joe Kunzler here. I'm grateful we worked through technical difficulties. Sometimes that just happens when you've got multiple input sources. I do want to, address for a minute or two the homeless situation. very carefully. I understand Mayor Franklin took a lot of flack over the Target last weekend from the Urbanist, media outlet that has proceeded to sabotage its credibility in my mind, because I think Mayor Franklin did the right thing by saying, whoa, 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 you're bringing people home. You're having my community house other communities' homeless problem without wraparound services, coordination, and cooperation. And I stand with Mayor Franklin on at least saying, pushing pause, considering that, quite frankly, none of these urbanist folks take homeless people into their own homes. So that's worth noting, and I appreciate the strength of Mayor Franklin's leadership against some of the more craziness. That said, I personally am very pro-housing. I am all for a minimum density requirement near swift corridors and light rail. I am all for, working to resolve homelessness. But what I'm not for is just a careless slapdash approach. And I appreciate Mayor Franklin standing up to that, because I will say that you try turning it into a transit discussion with the second half of my time. First off, Skagit Transit does not allow charity rides because we don't want to end up responsible for somebody else's homeless problem. So, we require, if you're on a county connector, you have to provide fare. Just file that away somewhere. With about a minute to go, there's another transit item that has my concern this evening, and that is Route 18. I wish it would run hourly and connect the Mukilteo Ferry Terminal, the Future Flight, and Everett Station. One of the reasons why I've called for growth through consolidation in that regard is because the Future Flight is currently not served properly, and Painfield is a key economic generator for one of the greatest cities in Puget Sound in Everett. So, as a matter of concern, as far as my background, I want to thank all our veterans. I especially want to give a shout out to a very strong woman in Major Krista Beowulf, who flew the F-35 behind me. I'm sure you'd agree with me. She's just as strong as Mayor Franklin. So I will stop on that positive note and thank you again for thanking our veterans. I'm sorry I'm not one. Thank you for all you do. You may have your 10 seconds back.
Thank you, Joe. That is all I have for virtual public commenters right now. And so I'll start with people in the chambers, and if Bill could come to the podium. And please state your full name and city for the record, and just keep an eye on the 30-second mark for your total 3 minutes that you have to speak.
I am Bill Wheeler, District 1. I'm here today because I have concerns regarding all requests to fund and further support our local law enforcement, and ask for serious consideration in regards to further fund and support programs such as the one proposed for additional officers for sex offender registry verification, besides the fact recidivism rates regarding registered sex offenders is near zero. The Snohomish County Sheriff and the Department of Corrections monitors all sex offenders at risk so severe it requires monitoring, not an Everett PD requirement. Furthermore, the Everett PD already routinely takes it upon their own behest to verify residency of those in their precincts to verify such residency. This process takes 2 seconds. Once a sex offender is off DOC, they are not required to be at home all day. Many have jobs. This furthermore brings an even bigger issue to the table. Why does the Everett PD want to expand services when they are failing at every level to control crime in our own city? On multiple occasions, I called the city or notified them via official reports and online for property crime, unlicensed vehicles, theft, trespassing, harassment, and even notified them regarding the drug house directly behind my home. And at every level, the Everett PD has failed. On one occasion, officers looked at a shopping cart full of syringes and walked away. Not 1, 2, or even 3 times, but 5 times. I counted on my own surveillance. Not only are the officers derelict, but on multiple occasions, I was blatantly lied to regarding apprehensions or attempts to find vagrants. If the Everett PD cannot uphold the law and take care of such trivial law enforcement issues, any discussion on further expanding any public service is a complete insult to all members of this community. I ask this council to take into consideration looking into swift actions to remedy a rogue law enforcement agency by 1, putting them on notice, and 2, consider cutting funds and look at contracting services to increase the presence of county officers. This has been done on a number of occasions throughout our history, as some agencies may adopt policies not in line with the best interest of the public. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill. Next, if Paula could come to the podium. And please begin by stating your full name and city for the record, and then you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Paula Townsell from Everett's District 3. I did take the opportunity to update all of the council members individually on my ongoing concerns on redistricting. However, I am pleased to say tonight that I believe the council is on track to regain the public trust in the redistricting process because we now concur on half of the facts. We agree there wasn't a public forum in District 1. Everett City Charter Section 21C states at least one public forum shall be held in each then existing district, and at least one public hearing shall be conducted on a citywide basis. Now I want to highlight the Commission's failure to hold a public hearing, which must be remedied. There are 3 terms we have to agree on: shall, forum, and hearing. Webster states shall, used in laws, regulations, or directives to express what is mandatory. Forum, a public meeting or lecture involving audience discussion. Hearing, a session as of a legislative committee in which testimony is taken from witnesses. I'm very well versed in public hearings and community forums. They are 2 completely different types of meetings. They're not interchangeable as the city has suggested. It's not merely semantics. They have different legal meanings. I've worked in land use planning for decades. Public hearings are much more than a casual community event. Hearings are never exclusionary of residents because they attended an earlier forum. Public hearings involve formal notice, which is typically a legal advertisement notice published in the newspaper of general circulation, as well as sent out with additional notification methods to interested parties, like neighborhood groups, parties of records, people who might have spoke or attended informational gathering sessions. I officially submitted a public records request for a copy of the legal notice of the redistricting public hearing, the hearing agenda, and copies of all public comments received for said public hearing. The city erroneously directed me to information on the 6 community meetings, which makes it clear there was no public hearing. So I'm again closing with my request for you to retract your approval and remand the redistricting plan to the Commission for fulfillment of the public process as mandated in our city charter. It is quicker and less costly to remedy the process than to ask voters to amend the charter to replace public hearing with community meetings. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Paula. Steve, if you could come to the podium, please. Please state your full name and city, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you.
You're
My name is Steve Ose. I'm in District 3. Live here in Everett. First of all, I'd like to point one thing out. I'm a adamant believer in the proper presentation of the U.S. flag. I was on the color guard team that presented the flag to President Reagan on opening day of baseball in Baltimore back in '86. And I always try to correct an improper presentation of the flag. I pointed it out to 2 different people across the street at the Wall Street building. The U.S. flag and the state flag that are in the foyer at the ground level are in the wrong places. They should be switched. The easy way to tell where they're supposed to be, if you look at the flags here, from the natural point of observation, which would be out here, the US flag is on the left. That's the position of hierarchy, is the farthest position on the left. Where the mayor sits, she's on the left of all of you in the presentation. That's the position of honor there. And that's where the US flag is supposed to be. US Code Title IV would clear that up if you have any questions. Reason I signed up tonight was not about the flag. It was about transit. We need to remember that transit is an asset of the city, owned by the citizens of the city. And you are all elected as stewards. We call you council members, or mayor, but what you are in that role is a steward for the citizens who are the owners of the city's assets. Everett Transit is a fantastic asset that other cities wish they had. We can have our transit do the service that we had this summer going down to the waterfront on our number 6. Go to Oso when they had the terrible tragedy up there several years ago. If we have a fire in the city, we can bring buses for temporary housing for people, for the firefighters, for the people who are displaced. We have the ability to do those things at a moment's notice. If you wanted a bus right now for temporary housing because it's cold out there, the mayor could call up transit and say, hey, Jim, yeah, I know you're not Tom, but this is the mayor and I need a bus out on Casino Road for the night. We'd do it because it's our buses and we can do that.
Steve, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
So remember that you're stewards. Be good stewards. Take care of our assets and allow them to be used for the citizens. It doesn't help through a merger. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. President Stonecipher, we have one more person, but they would like to participate when we get to agenda item 9.
Very good. Thank you. That's all the public comment for now. We'll move on to council comments and liaison reports. And we'll start with Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mayor Franklin, for the proclamation. As the wife of a veteran, Veterans Day is a very special day and a holiday for me, and really important to acknowledge the service that family members give to our country as well when they have a spouse or a loved one that serves in our military. So thank you for bringing that forward. And I also want to make a mention that the Carl Gibson Community Center has a Veterans Day celebration this Veterans Day on Friday. From 1 to 2 o'clock, they'll have a program, and then from 2 to 5 p.m., they'll have a good old-fashioned USO dance. So just wanted to make sure that's on folks' calendar. I wanted to bring up a letter of support tonight. So yesterday at the Snohomish County Council meeting, Councilmembers Naring and Councilmember Megan Dunn brought forward a letter of support, supporting our nurses at Providence. As we all know, we've been hearing from nurses for a number of months now, and Councilmembers Fossey, Schwab, and I have been meeting with administration to talk about ways that we can collaborate and work together. So the letter was emailed on Friday to council members, sharing support for our nurses and also offering some solutions on ways that the nursing crisis could be helped or buoyed through the whole through the process. So I'd be happy to read it into the record. It is almost 2 pages. But council members were provided with it on Friday, and then again, the signed copy from the county council yesterday. So follow your direction on if you'd like me to read into the record or not.
I think we've received the copy, so I guess just let council members who would like to sign on know how they would do that. Is that going to be available in the council office for them to?
Yes,
lend their
yes. So
support?
if council members would mind sharing during their comments if they would like to sign on or not, or if you need more time to review, if you could let Angie know. The due date is Friday, so either mention today or tomorrow if you'd like to sign on would be great. I think it's a great way to let our the purpose of the letter is in the spirit of collaboration, problem solving, and partnership. And so moving forward, I think it'd be a great way just to let our nurses know how much we support them in ways that we can use our voices to help with problem solving.
Thank you.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogtley.
Good evening, everybody. It's really nice to see you all here tonight. Thank you, Joe, on TV. And I don't have a motion to make right now, but I would like to hear more about what legal thinks about districts. Doesn't have to be tonight even, but I will wait on that. I'm also the wife of a veteran, so yay. And I would like to sign on to the letter supporting nurses. So I've made my voice known out loud, and I will put my signature on it. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jarlingo.
Well, in light of the multiple briefings we've gotten tonight, or will be getting tonight, and the comment, I'll keep my comments short, and actually only to the letter. I have been looking further at the sources of the difficulties in nursing we have at the hospitals, not only Providence, but other hospitals as well. And while I am cautious about signing on to something that I haven't personally verified all the information for, but I'm still inclined to sign that because I think that, as Councilmember Ryan said, it was written in the spirit of collaboration with some good suggestions about things that can be done. It's a very difficult and long-standing situation, so again, with reservations, I plan to sign that as well. And that's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Fosse.
Yes, please add my name signing on to the letter as well. And thank you, Mayor Franklin, for the beautiful proclamation. My husband is also a veteran, so, you know, in that spirit, you know, thank you to everyone for their service in this community. I also wanted to wish a happy anniversary to Deb. I believe it's her work anniversary. I'm not sure which year it is, but it is pretty significant up there. And I know that she has been working for the city for a very long time, and she's not here tonight, but I know her anniversary is coming up this next week. So just wanted to say how much we appreciate her. And then the other thing is, I know that the city has been working on recognition of Native American History Month as well, and that they have a lot of robust social media planned, and they are focused on promoting, you know, the partnerships in the arts and everything related to that. So with that in mind, I would like to work with the city and our tribal partners on doing a resolution and recognition of that month. And if I can work on that with a...
So I will say, first of all, we are all part of the city. We are very excited to work on that with you, and I know that our engagement director, Nicole, is very passionate about this as well, and happy to work on additional ways to recognize this month, and yeah, we'll follow up with you probably tomorrow. Thank you very much for bringing it up.
Yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwab.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. I'd like to remind those that are listening or listening in the future that there's been an application, a use application for the Women and Children's Center located on the corner of Suvers Ducey Road Boulevard and Glenwood. I would really encourage all members of our community to participate in those, and also would like to encourage the mayor's staff to make sure that VOA is taking a large swath and get as much input as we can on that event. Also, yeah, I would like to support the letter and sign the letter for the nurses. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just add my thanks to the veterans in our community and everywhere, really. As you go about your business on Friday, probably have a day off of school or maybe a day off of work. Please remember to thank the veteran. We all know at least one. And then I wanted to let my council colleagues know that next week we have quite a packed agenda with the budget hearing and several other weighty items. I'm going to, as a council agenda item, we're going to move the council comments to the end of the agenda so that staff members, we can get to the stuff that people want to hear about first, and then some of the staff can get out of here while we give our comments to the community. We'll see how that works. That's all from me. Do we have an administrative update this evening?
Thank you, Council President. Bob Leonard does have, our Parks and Facilities Director, a quick update for council. So Bob can come up.
Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, Bob Leonard, Parks and Facilities staff. I'm here tonight to ask council to adopt an emergency resolution to address windstorm damage that affects the Everett Community College Early Childhood Learning Center, which is adjacent to Legion Memorial Golf Course. Legion Memorial Golf Course is a direct neighbor of the Early Learning Center, which provides child care for infants and children. Along the boundary between the golf course and the Early Learning Center are 80-foot poles and netting that protect the Early Learning Center from golf balls. The windstorm we all experienced on Friday night snapped multiple poles along with the attached netting. An assessment of the remaining poles determined that the poles are compromised and should be removed and to avoid damage to neighboring facilities. After the windstorm, Parks and Facilities staff contacted Net Services LLC, the original vendor that installed the poles and netting. Net Services has responded with a proposal for about $310,000 for cleanup, removal, and replacement of the poles and netting. The windstorm and resultant damage were unforeseen circumstances beyond the control of the city that A, present a real immediate threat to the proper performance of essential functions of the city, and B, will likely result in material loss or damage to property, bodily injury, or loss of life if immediate action is not taken. In summary, we are requesting council adopt the resolution declaring an emergency for purposes of waiving competitive bidding requirements for cleanup, removal, and replacement of poles and netting at Legion Memorial Golf Course after damage caused by the windstorm on November 4th, 2022. And that concludes my briefing. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We need to move the motion first before we have council comments?
That would be our typical process.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution declaring an emergency for purposes of waiving competitive bidding requirements for cleanup, removal, and replacement of poles and netting at Legion Memorial Golf Course after damage caused by the windstorm on November 4th, 2022?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Seconded.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I was curious if children are still able to attend the Early Learning Center, they're just not able to use the outside space?
I think it's closed right now. We're still trying to, one of the poles actually landed on the building, so the crews have been starting to clean that up, so I don't believe that they're open currently. I think that once we have secured the site before the complete remedy is done, they would be able to reopen.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? How long are you expecting it'll be for them to get the netting installed? It seems like somewhat of a project.
Yeah, it's, there's gonna be a little bit of a lead time on the material, so I think they said about 2 weeks for installation once they get the materials, but the materials could take 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh my gosh, okay. That's crazy. All right. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely.
This is a really good thing to be asking for. I'm just wanting to make sure that an emergency ordinance is acceptable when it comes to distributing funds for a service.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
We've looked at this. We've actually also consulted with outside counsel and determined that this is absolutely appropriate. And one important thing to remember is that although the emergency process waives the competitive bid requirement so that it can move faster, it doesn't waive any other requirements. So for example, the prevailing wage requirement is still in place.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. And we are come to legal. Mr. Hall, do you have anything for us for regular business tonight?
We're not requesting an executive session tonight, but I do have a brief report, especially as Councilmember Vogely has asked for some more comments from legal on the districting matter. And also, I did tell you last week that while we were very confident that none of the concerns raised by Everett districts now should cause council to consider rescinding the approval of the map or requiring additional process by the district commission, that we would go back and take a very deep look at the issue concerning the location of the District 1 meeting, which was held at the Everett Public Library, slightly outside the boundaries of District 1. We have looked at that as thoroughly as we can look at it, and have actually also consulted with outside counsel and determined that that just is not something that would justify council either rescinding the map or requiring additional process. The case law is very clear that if there's substantial compliance, meaning the fundamental purposes of the statute, or in this case, the charter provision, were satisfied, that technicalities do not justify further action.
Thank you. Councilmember Vogely, did that answer your questions?
I'm going to delay my comments to another meeting.
Thank you.
Probably not next week because it's really busy, but don't worry, they're coming.
Thank you. We will move to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion for the 3 consent items?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Councilmember Schwab, second.
We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
Yes.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes. We have 5 proposed action items. They are all second readings and have already been read into the record. Do we have any questions on the proposed action items? Seeing none, we will move on to our action agenda. Item 9, amend resolution number 7752, establishing city council rules and procedures for conduct to allow council member remote participation upon approval of the council president. Do I hear a motion?
I move to amend Resolution 7752, establishing city council rules and procedures for conduct to allow council member remote participation at council meetings upon approval of the council president as shown in Section 3, Number 2 of the amended resolution.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do you have questions or comments? Councilmember Zarlingo?
I've been considering this because I knew it was coming. We've all made a commitment to serve the city and its community members. And important parts of the nature of that service are the council procedures that we discuss in detail and settle on at and around the long meeting we call our retreat at the beginning of the year. Attendance and participation by us and by our community members are interrelated issues, as we found through many discussions in January of this year. There were lots of proposals and revisions, discussions over several weeks. Considering the situation and those factors, I move to table this amendment to Resolution 7752 until we can take it up in the full context that I think is required at our regular January retreat and its surrounding discussions.
There's a motion to table on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have motion and a second to table, and we can speak
Do I
now
even
to
get
the motion.
to say why I moved the motion? Is that even in the records? Like, did that
We
happen?
will allow that as we consider the move to amend, so. Comments, would you like to go? Go ahead, you can go first.
Yeah, okay, so originally when this was proposed with our procedures, we were mostly a brand-new council, and it was not something that I anticipated being a issue of debate. Arlington City Council, Bothell City Council, Edmonds City Council, Gold Bar City Council, Granite Falls City Council, Lake Stevens City Council, Linwood City Council, Mill Creek City Council, Monroe City Council, Mount Lake Terrace City Council, Mukilteo City Council, Snohomish City Council, Snohomish County Council, the Puget Sound Regional Council. They all allow for hybrid remote access, especially in cases of emergency, childcare, other things like that. It's a common standard practice now, and I think Everett is behind the times. I wasn't realizing that we had to have that argument when we were originally speaking about it, and I don't think the case was adequately made with that. Now, coming up next week, we have seen that repeatedly there's been issues when it comes to a sick child, or issues when it comes to other times of access where you have council members that are gone for health reasons or other reasons, like we have one that is gone today, who would have been able to potentially attend remotely if they chose to do so and actually be a voice for their community, but they're not allowed to because we have a very strict policy that I don't think is working for us. So that's why I brought it up again, because Councilmember Ryan is going to be out on business for the council next week on a very, very important meeting. And it would be my hopes that she would be able to attend and actually participate for her community, for her district, because the reason why she's going to be gone and not being able to be physically present is literally because of council. And it just seems overly restrictive for no good reason when we can change that right here and now. So I would request that you please do not vote to table this today. It's not causing any harm to move this forward. It's helping the community, and it's the best for the community.
Any other comments on this before we?
I imagine we're going to vote on the table, and then, depending on that, we'll do more comments and vote on the original motion?
Correct.
Okay, then I will wait.
Okay.
I believe there's also a public comment for this one as well.
Oh,
Yes, there is.
I'm not sure when that
I'm sorry,
comes
thank you,
in
Angie.
with,
I
so.
do not, yes, let's pull the public comment. I don't
Okay,
have the
so if
public
Chris
comment.
could come to the podium. Please state your full name and city for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
I'm Chris Lanz, District 3. I live in Everett. Thank you. And I would just like to say, if my esteemed council member was unavailable for a meeting of such importance where we're discussing, where you're going to be discussing the budget, if you were out on council business, or you had childcare issues, or you were sick, or any of you, for some reason, justified or not, couldn't be here and could, though, participate in the meeting remotely, I would like to know that you were able to do that. I would like to be represented by my council member, at meetings of that importance. So for you to table this issue to some later date when you have such important things coming up is, I think, an injustice and very not short-sighted as far as caring for your community and being members of this council. It's a very esteemed position that you're in. I think that if changes need to be made so that you can all participate, I think those changes should be made immediately, not put off to some future date because there's the idea of tabling. That's kind of a, we use tabling in Robert's Rules of Orders for some kind of goofy reasons sometimes, and I'm not saying that that's the reason why it's being used here, but it's kind of a maneuver that's kind of, in a way, clandestine, in effect. So I think that's a rather ridiculous motion, personally. And if you don't like my opinion, that's up to you, but that's what I say. And I also would like to say one more thing about spending $310,000 on some poles for the golf course. Does the golf course not have insurance that can pay for these poles? It seems to me like that was a natural disaster insurance should pay for. Why is the community having to pay $310,000 when we already have a budget that you're going to be looking at that has some strains in it already? And if so, can't the golf course pay for it themselves? Are they not working at a profit? And if so, if they are not working at a profit, why do we have 2 golf courses in the city of Everett, that are working at a loss? Anyway, please don't table this issue, vote on it, and make it so that, Paula, Ryan, or council member Ryan, and anyone who happens to have problems that keep them from not being able to attend the meetings can be at these very important meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment on the motion to table? Well, I'll just say for me, I'm going to go along with motion to table because the amended resolution as it's written is not something that I can support for two reasons. One, it doesn't require that the council member be on video, and two, it leaves it completely up to the council president to decide whether one would be able to participate remotely. And having served on this council for a very long time, I know that the powers of the council presidency, in my opinion, should be limited somewhat. There have been times in the past that council presidents would certainly not treat all members of the council fairly. So I just think that that is, leaves it open to bias, and I would like to have some more time to think about how we would do this. There's also the matter of technologically how we do this, because we don't currently have the equipment to facilitate hybrid meetings very well. So I would like to have more information about how that would, how we would get up to speed to do that. So, yes, Councilmember Zarlingo, and then
I guess,
Councilmember-
given the additional discussion, I'll make a comment or two about, behind my concern about this. We had a lot of discussions about public comment and council member response, and the sequence that ensures all the things that should be heard are heard by the council members before the votes happen, and that they participate fully in that. And there were, as I said, a lot of interactions in these things. It was complicated. We ended up spending a lot more time on it, even with an experienced admin like Deb. And so that's what makes me cautious about this. For example, can we be sure that a council member is not only on video and present, but present for all of the discussions, deliberations, public comment, et cetera, before votes are taken, before action is taken. So those kinds of things have caused me to be cautious about this. I think it deserves the full exploration that we do with all of the things that have to do with council procedures that happen. I'm not sure if it's starting or really kind of the middle of it is the retreat, and then finally the vote on those procedures. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to evade anything here, especially not public scrutiny. I'm trying to make sure this is as open as possible, that we think ahead through this kind of thing, and that generally, wherever possible, we do these things once per year when people expect us to be considering these kinds of things. Thank you.
Councilmember Vogely.
I can do math, and I see that it may be tabled, and I want to make sure that I am heard before I am not allowed to be heard anymore. So shall I still talk now or save it?
Go ahead.
Okay. It's really interesting bringing up the rules about the president deciding who gets to do what, and really actually in our charter, I mean, because we're talking a lot about the rules and changing them or not changing them, or being really focused on words and semantics, and I can get really good at that. And in the charter, not only does it say that we make up our own procedures, but when it comes to people being absent, meetings of the council shall be presided over by the president, selected annually by a majority vote of the council, we do that, or in the absence of the president, by a member of the council selected by a majority of the members present at such meeting. We don't do that, we have our vice president. And it's here, and I know where it is. And so you'll just have to wait with bated breath. Nope, that's not it. Damn it, sorry. Ooh, language. At all meetings of the council, a majority of the council members shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. May compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as may be prescribed by ordinance, determine its own rules, and rules of conduct, and maintenance of order. I apologize last week for a little bit of unorderly. Any member with any question shall be voted upon by roll call. It's in here. If you find it first, I didn't underline it. I am really mad at myself right now. And I'm gonna find it after we're done with this. But essentially, the president, the whole members of council are supposed to excuse the member that is gone for the day, right? And as we've been doing it, they're excused by the president. And if a council member misses 3 meetings in a row without being excused, then they can be ejected from city council. And we have all just been going about our business, allowing one person to say whether that council member is excused or not. And I just find that interesting because that's a rule that we're not following. There are many rules that we're not following. And the president, and so it's you because you're the president right now, has the opportunity to make this happen. We could vote for this, and we could say, yeah, the president gets to do it, and then you could still say no. Or probably we could just say that we have these rules of procedure and be like, you know what? We're in the year 2022. We've just gone through COVID. People are doing things virtually all the time. Let's get with it and allow a council member who has a very valid reason, and even like someone said, that doesn't even have to be valid. This is valid. Let her participate. This is a participatory government and a governing system. We have rules, we can break them, we can follow them, we can change them. Just change it. And I'll find it and I will tell you where that sentence is. Mark my words.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're gonna vote. Oh,
Yeah,
Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, I've been silent at this point. There's a couple things I'd like to consider. One is maybe a 1 day or a week, or one meeting a month remote, or 2, if that's a challenge for council members to make meetings for various reasons. Also, I just want to share my point of view. If I know I'm going to miss a council meeting, and I know Councilmember Tui has done also, is we've studied up on the agenda, and we have passed along the information to members that will attend here, and we address the issues. Just because we're not here at the meeting doesn't mean I'm not going to make sure my input is provided on the issues. So I'd certainly like to consider if the council wants more remote meetings, I'd like to see it more scheduled. And also I'd like the city to set up the option of being able to do in a hybrid also. I'd like to consider that later, and that's why I'm supporting tabling it.
And I'll just say for my part, our procedures as we wrote them last, I guess it was last March, we finally approved them, do allow for 1 meeting a month to be remote, as I read it, I believe. So, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Vogely.
Shall we move to have the meeting of the 16th remote?
Well, we have a motion to table on the floor right now.
I know, it's not quite time to make that motion.
Any other final questions or comments on the motion to table? Okay, we're voting on the motion to table first. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Ryan?
No.
Councilmember Vogely?
No.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse?
No.
Councilmember Schwab?
Yes.
President Stonecipher?
Yes, and with a tie, that fails. So it is not tabled. We'll take up the main motion. And the main motion is item 9, the council to amend the procedures. Any questions or comments on this before we take the action? Councilmember Fosse.
The language was based off the previous language that was provided in the procedures, which through looking at other councils, that long list I gave you, and that was just the ones I looked at around Snohomish County, it was just based off of, it looked like another council's procedures. And so that's where a lot of that language, I am totally fine with amending that and changing that and editing that. That is not where I have any sort of ownership. So if there is something else in there that could be added that is more acceptable to allow for greater access, I'm on board. But the language about the minimum requirements, stuff like that, it looks like it comes from the RCW, and they're just minimum requirements, for, during the pandemic and whatnot. If you want to change that, that's totally okay with me.
Other comments or questions on the main action before we take the roll? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ryan?
For a quick clarification, the yes vote is to amend, and a no vote would be to not amend.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
yes, amend.
Councilmember Vogely?
Yes.
Councilmember Zarlingo?
No.
Councilmember Fosse? Yes. Councilmember Schwab?
No.
President Stonecipher?
No. The motion fails with a tie. And this will appear on our council retreat agenda. We go on to our council briefing agenda. These items come before our council serving as a council committee of the whole and are likely to be scheduled at a future meeting. Item 10 is a public hearing and briefing. Council Bill 2211-49, first reading, adopt an ordinance establishing Everett Utilities rates for 2023 to 2024 and amending EMC 14.04.020, EMC 14.60.010, EMC 14.16.712, and EMC 14.16.713. The third and final reading and public hearing on this item will be on November 30th, and the public hearing is now open. Oh, hi, Ryan. I think we have Matt Welborn here.
Good evening. Ryan Sass with Public Works. We have a brief presentation for you this evening. In January of 2021, City Council passed our current water and sewer utility rate ordinance. The ordinance established rates for 2021 through 2024 rate period. The ordinance set overall rate increases for 2023 and 2024 at about 2.5% per year. During the last 22 months, the economic landscape has changed dramatically in ways that would have been hard to imagine during the rate-setting preparation in 2020. General or consumer inflation is currently running at over 8% per year. The Producer Price Index for construction goods and services, which is a better metric representing our construction costs, currently stands at over 21% per year. This kind of inflation represents a severe threat to the ability of the utility to deliver our capital improvements needed to maintain and improve our infrastructure for water, sewer, and storm drainage. It can quickly deplete our cash balances that are set aside for rate stability while delivering our capital program. It's difficult to predict whether the new inflationary pressures will be long-term or not. As a result, we are proposing a modest rate increase for the remaining 2 years of our current 4-year rate ordinance. We are not requesting a large rate increase at a time when many of our customers are recovering from pandemic-induced financial pressures. Our proposal is to make a modest increase in rates in the neighborhood of about 5% each year for the remaining 2 years of our 4-year rate period, while deferring some essential capital projects for at least 2 years to make that possible. In the presentation, we'll be referring to a couple of terms that I'll introduce here. You'll see the term long-term essential capital improvement program. That's essentially represents our full capital improvement projects as identified in our various comprehensive plans for water, sewer, water filtration, water pollution control, and storm drainage. All of these projects are essential for the long-term resilience and performance of our utility infrastructure. We'll also be referring to a new term that we're referring to as urgent capital improvement programs. Those represent a subset of projects that are more immediately necessary to avoid risk of service disruption or are required by operating permits, laws, or regulations. The essential concept of our modest rate increase proposal is for the remaining 2 years of the rate period, coupled with deferring some of our essential capital projects in order to keep our rate increase well below the current rate of consumer inflation. At this point, I'd like to introduce Matt Wellborn, our Finance and Support Services Manager, and he'll take you through the details of the proposed rate modification.
Thank you, Ryan. Matt Wellborn, Public Works. Excuse me. Concurrently with the staff request to amend the utility rate ordinance that Ryan has mentioned, we are working to provide delinquent account relief for those utility customers adversely impacted financially by the COVID pandemic. Staff are working to apply both state and federal assistance grants to reduce or eliminate current customer utility account delinquencies. These programs will be rolled out over the next several weeks. The utility's stated financial objectives are designed to minimize rate volatility to customers, keep a favorable bond rating, and preserve long-term financial stability. In this graphic, we'll be referring, as Ryan said, to urgent CIP representing projects that are immediately necessary to avoid risk of service disruption or are required by operating permits and regulations versus long-term essential CIP represented in our full projected capital improvement projects as identified in our water, sewer, water filtration plant, water pollution control facility, and stormwater comprehensive plans, all of which are required for the long-term performance and resilience of our current infrastructure. This graph shows the negative financial impact of inflation on capital construction over the last several years. If you look at the top blue line, that is our full long-term essential CIP adjusted for what we believe will be the future inflation over the next several years. The purple line at the bottom is our current essential long-term CIP at our previous inflation rates of 3% a year. So we're talking a huge gap in the change over what we were thinking of it just this time last year on CIP. And the dark blue line in the middle is what we're now referring to as our urgent CIP, which pretty much overlays with what a year ago we thought would be our full-on CIP. So it's been a huge impact on where we think we are going on spending for capital improvements. It is estimated that if the Everett Utilities was to still move forward with the essential CIP, the cumulative cost of construction will be increasing over $600 million between 2023 and 2030, based on the rate of inflation estimates for the next 8 years. Therefore, we have reduced our capital program significantly for the next few years, and we will have the opportunity to revisit this at our next full 4-year rate term beginning in 2025. These are the 6 key capital projects scheduled over the next 6 years, 2022 to 2027 inclusive. These projects are to be funded with a combination of existing cash on hand, revenues in excess of O&M on an annual basis, and new debt issuance, the first of which will occur in the spring of 2023. These projects include this new service center relocation, the Port Gardner-based storage facility located at the old Kimberly-Clark treatment facility, Reservoir 2 on Rucker Hill, with which we are almost done with that project, Reservoir 3, which will require replacement of the existing reservoir with 3 above-ground tanks, the water filtration plant Phase 2 projects, which include new generators, emergency generators at the filter plant, and the water pollution control facility conveyance project, which will allow for a diversion of stormwater flows to bypass the plant and flow directly into our treatment lagoons. The previously approved 2022-2023 rates are shown on this chart in blue. Staff is recommending approval of the 2 incremental increases you see at the top of 2023 and 2024. Rates at this consumption level of 1,000 cubic feet per month represent 250 gallons a day of water consumption, plus the removal of wastewater and management of stormwater for a typical resident. Here you can see a comparison of Everett's 2022 and proposed 2023 utility rates compared with other local utilities. Those are our 2 rates on the left side of the graph. Everett's proposed 2023 rate is still competitive with local utilities' 2022 rates. As a measure of affordability, as determined by the Environmental Protection Agency, Everett's rates are still well below the affordability threshold of 4% of median household income. Median household income in Everett is currently at $66,000. At administration's request, both the second and third readings of the ordinance are scheduled for public comment on the 16th and 30th of this month. Staff will conduct a traditional comprehensive cost of service study in 2024 and will likely present a new 4-year rate ordinance to council for council action in November of 2024. This ordinance would set rates for 2025 through 2028. In closing, we respectfully request council approve the 2023-2024 amending rate ordinance as presented.
Thank you. And I'll see if any council members have any questions or comments about this. Councilmember Vogely.
This kind of goes with it. I live in Southwest Everett, and so I get a water bill and a sewer bill from, Water, Public Works, Everett, and then Mukilteo Wastewater District.
Sewer, yes.
So I'm curious how that may be factored. Sorry, guys. Okay. How that may be factored into this rate increase.
Well, we have no control over Mukilteo's rate, except that they treat most of their sewage through Everett, and so their rate is set somewhat based on what we charge them for wholesale sewer. But your water rate is based the same as all other city residents, as well as the stormwater charge. So I'm not sure if that really answers your question or not, but
I understand the answer. How about that? I don't know if it answers my question, but I totally understand the answer.
We have 10 years to go on our sewer contract.
That
with
was my
Mukilteo.
next question. So nice job reading my mind, even
So
though I know.
2032 it expires.
Okay, I thought it was a lot sooner than that. I thought it was really coming up. But I'll try to remember that. And this has nothing at all to do with what you just said. It's Charter Section 2.8, Citizens Commission on, sorry. 2.6, Forfeiture of Office. I told you I would come back with the information that I was looking for during comments. There it is. Okay. Thank you so much for your detailed information.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Zerlingo.
Just that you've answered exactly the kind of questions I would have asked in terms of a really difficult thing like this. We don't want to raise rates if we don't have to, and I know you've been really careful and already making painful decisions about things to defer or not to do. And I particularly appreciate the effort to soften the blow for those who have the most difficulty in paying. So thank you for the presentation, and that answered all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I have none. I appreciate the measure of affordability. That's a new, I don't remember seeing that in the past. So is that just a new requirement?
We laughed in our 2020 ordinance, I think it was the first time we used that as a metric.
Okay, yeah. I mean,
very
we are at the top of the list, though, when I look at our other cities around, aside from Tacoma and Seattle and Bremerton, oddly. What's going on there?
It's hard to directly compare rates because it's hard to tell where other utilities are in their infrastructure upgrades and meeting regulatory compliance. So, you know, it's nice to look at, but it's not real relevant to depends how far you drill down.
Right.
Because there's lots of different places they could be in the process of infrastructure age, et cetera.
Yeah, so we don't know what kind of deferred maintenance they
No,
may have.
no.
And we always had as our policy that we fund 100% of depreciation?
Yes. It's always been stated and has been put in writing over the last 10 years or so. And depreciation equals roughly the coverage rate, about $15 million a year is the minimum. And we end up cash funding more than that. Essentially, historically, we cash fund about 50% of our projects, debt fund the rest. And we would not like to go, I'm not comfortable going beyond that. That would make me
Okay.
very
great.
uncomfortable.
No other questions from me, so we will see you back on the 30th.
See me on the 30th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see.
Council President?
Yes.
I believe this item was titled Public Hearing and Briefing. So I think we need to announce public hearing, see if there are any comments, and then after comments or after no one has comments, close the public hearing.
Thank you. Did we have anyone signed up for this public hearing? Leo? Order. Stay in order.
We do not have any public comments regarding this matter.
Okay, thank you. And I think we will keep the public hearing open and close it on November 30th when we have some, maybe some final comments. On to the remaining briefing agenda. So we've got, our first briefing item is presenter is Michael Hermstead from the State Auditor's Office. He's gonna give us about a 10-minute briefing and let us know about the IT audit results. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, I'm Michael Hermstead from the Office of the State Auditor. I am an Assistant Audit Manager there. Also attends remotely today with me is Jamie Barrickman, who led our cybersecurity audit, and also our Audit Manager, Aaron Laska. I'd just like to thank the Council for the opportunity to address you today. And I'm pleased to discuss the results of our audit titled Opportunities to Improve City of Everett's Information Technology Security. The State Auditor's Office is well aware, as I'm sure you guys are, of the importance of IT security. You can't avoid the many news articles and other stories and audit results and other reports describing all the challenges and risks we all face in the IT environment. As a result of all of this, a few years ago, our office started a program to allow governments to participate in performance audits focusing on cybersecurity. The City of Everett volunteered to participate a few years ago, and we began an audit with the city just over a year ago in October of 2021. Our audit looked at the city's IT security from two perspectives. First, we looked at specific vulnerabilities that may exist in the current IT environment of the city, things that could lead to increased risk. And we did this in two ways. We have our own internal IT security practitioners who performed vulnerability scans and other technical tests to identify potential vulnerabilities. And we also brought a team from the firm Imagine Security to perform penetration testing on various City of Everett systems. This team performs vulnerability and pen testing across a variety of industries and including government and global Fortune 500 organizations. And their focus was also to identify potential vulnerabilities in the city's network at the time of testing, and also to provide guidance on how to address any issues found. For the second topic, we evaluated the city's policies, procedures, and standards against leading practices to ensure good security is implemented properly at the city. We chose for this the Center for Internet Security Controls as our primary source for leading practices. These are a very challenging set of practices, but they are focused on really identifying specific ways in which attackers will attack cities or other individuals, governments, private organizations, and then what are the specific steps that can be taken to most effectively reduce the chance of success in those attacks. So before I go over the audit results, I would just like to mention this audit was conducted in accordance with generally accepted government accounting or audit standards, and it was funded under Initiative 900 from 2005, which supported the funding of performance audits. One of the requirements of Initiative 900 is to have this public hearing after the report has been released, which is what we're doing today. I will also mention that anytime you do a security assessment, you will have results. This is not something that anyone is ever perfect at. And certainly no one, as you guys all know, budgets are always tight, and having enough budget to be completely secure would be all your budget would be spent on. So that's not going to happen. So our audit did find, we found that the city's policies and procedures and processes partially align with leading practices. And we also identified some technical security issues which the city has taken steps to address. As noted also in the second paragraph of our audit results, this statement that I just gave you, which is the results in the public report, is very high level. That is to protect the security of the city. We don't want to publish anything that would put you at risk when the entire point of the audit was to reduce your risk. This handling is consistent with RCW 4256-420 Section 4, which exempts details of security assessments from public disclosure. And we would finally just like to recommend the city continue its effort to remediate the risk we identified during the audit and to use available best practices to improve their city's policy standards and procedures. And I would like to close out by just recognizing the city's leadership and volunteering for this audit, and also thank the entire IT staff of the city for their assistance throughout this process, particularly Stephen Hellier, Rick Bailey, and Lucas Hahn, who between them attended every meeting and answered pretty much all our questions. So greatly appreciated. And that is it. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thanks so much for being here tonight. I recently took a tour of the Snow Isle Tech Center, and on the tour, they acknowledged Stephen Hellier as their celebrity graduate and called him out specifically with their cybersecurity program. So I wanted to give a shout out to Stephen. I was curious if the audit also included an analysis of the cyber protection of our critical infrastructure.
I believe we did do some work on critical infrastructure. We are usually extremely cautious with that because it's very easy to cause problems when you are testing critical infrastructure. But we mostly focused on external, more general stuff. And really, I don't want to go into any more detail than that for security reasons. Yeah, the state is also, we actually also have a bigger critical infrastructure audit we're doing throughout the state of other locations we haven't hit. So critical infrastructure is a key issue right now, and we do focus a lot on that. So I actually appreciate that you brought that up, because that is a big consideration in security today.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember.
Happy to hear that the city volunteered for this. That says quite a bit, because they know that nothing will be found to be perfect. And I just got a letter, I think last week, from my bank that they had suffered a data breach. So that's probably the 10th time in about 10 years I've gotten those kinds of notifications. So I just want to say that I appreciate that. I think that's exactly what we need to do, and I guess it makes me a little more tolerant of the extra hair pulling I've done with some multi-factor authentication with the city this year.
Any other questions or comments? I just have a question. Obviously, you can't go into too much detail because of security reasons, but had there been like serious gaps in our IT security, how would the council be notified of that?
So that process would really be up to the IT department's normal processes for that sort of thing. So I really can't comment on that. They have the information. We are available. I'm available to the city. Our team is available to the city. Imagine Security is available to the city to assist with any questions that come up, even though we're closing out the audit now. We are more than welcome to, or willing to help. And also, we are open to doing an executive briefing, or executive session, sorry, with the council. So if you guys are interested, you can talk to Stephen. He can arrange an executive session, and then we can talk to you in more detail in that forum.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Great, thank you so much for being here this evening and for helping us with this work. I know it's very important, and especially at this time and with all the technology that we rely on a daily and weekly basis.
Happy to help.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have Everett Housing Authority's Executive Director, Ashley Lammers is here. Ashley Lammers Johnson is here with consultants Bob Bangford of Makers and Leslie Bain of the Framework Cultural Placemaking to give us a little presentation on the redevelopment plans. And I guess we've got about 15 minutes on this. Good evening, Ashley.
Good evening. Madam Mayor, City Council members, and members of the public. Good evening. My name is Ashley Lammers Johnson. I've been the Executive Housing Authority, the Executive Director of the Everett Housing Authority for the past 10 years. Thanks for this opportunity to engage in this conversation with you about the future of the former Baker Heights, or the Park District as we now call it. A future that includes up to 1,500 housing units and a significant amount of space for a variety of retail and civic amenities. I want to talk about why we are doing this and why we are choosing to invest $750 million or more in the Delta neighborhood. Today, we are at a turning point in the history of the Everett Housing Authority. The Housing Authority turned 80 years last month. Baker Heights has stood for 79 years. As we enter the next 80 years, our mission calls on us to do a lot more than simply providing housing for people with economic and other challenges. You can change to that slide. Thank you. Over the past 10 years, we pursued our strategic objective of ensuring that across the city, all our viable housing developments are physically and financially viable for decades to come. We've had great success in accomplishing this goal and more, especially in the Delta neighborhood where most of our subsidized and affordable housing were concentrated. Today, if you walk through this neighborhood, you will notice that the most attractive housing resources are those that we own and manage. When the current new construction of 105 units on part of the old Baker Heights site is completed, we will have invested over $100 million in the Delta neighborhood to acquire, renovate, and develop new housing units over the past 10 years. We have demonstrated a deep commitment to this neighborhood. As we pivot to the next 80 years, our mission has become much more than housing. Our mission is to create or provide equitable access to communities of opportunity for people experiencing challenges in the housing market. We want to do this throughout this city, whether it is through our Housing Choice Voucher program, transformation of our current properties, new construction, and acquisition of properties. As an example of this, we recently completed the acquisition of Huntington Park, a 381-unit, $121 million property in a great neighborhood, rich in all sorts of amenities and opportunities. We want all our customers to live in communities with access to high-quality housing, good schools, transportation, jobs, daycare, preschool education, public libraries, grocery stores, coffee shops, and green spaces, without having to get into a car and drive. And this is precisely what we want to do in the Park District and the people for the Park District and the people living in the Delta neighborhood. We do not want to build the next great housing project, nor create better conditions to enable families to survive, nor create a bigger and more attractive concentration of poverty. In fact, we have been committed to ensure that we do not increase the concentration of subsidized housing in the Delta neighborhood. We want to use this opportunity at the beginning of our next 80 years to transform this neighborhood into an attractive community of high opportunity, where people of all incomes and backgrounds will be able to thrive, not just survive, where they can enjoy magnificent views that the site offers in all directions, where they can get up in the morning and walk their children to daycare, preschool, or grade school, where they can walk to a grocery store, stop for coffee, play in a park, all within 15 minutes of their front door. Everybody deserves equitable access to opportunity. Some of these opportunities were never available to the former residents of Baker Heights or the neighbors of Baker Heights. The Delta neighborhood deserves access to these opportunities so that children who grow up here over the next 80 years will have a brighter future than the children who lived in Baker Heights in the past 80 years. And this is why we are doing this. Thanks. Bob Benkford will take over.
Thank you, Ashley. Good evening, council members. So why Delta and why now? Would you say that the need is reinforced by city policy, some of the recent housing work that the city's done, as well as the community engagement process that EHA undertook with the master planning process? And so housing is obviously the first need, and you'll see there that the recent housing work that the city did in 2019 with the housing needs assessment identified a need for 23,000 additional housing units in Everett by 2035. And for context, Everett has 45,000 units right now. And this amounts to about 1,500 units per year that need to be added to meet this need, pretty substantial. So racial equity is the second point. And the project is essentially, it's a community building investment in Delta, creating vibrant spaces to gather, socialize, integrate civic services and amenities. Decarbonization is a third point, creating a compact bicycle and pedestrian friendly community, emphasizing sustainable design and building materials, in part through the use of cross-laminated timber construction on many of the buildings. And zooming a little bit on why here, this is where EHA's ownership is with the Baker Heights property there. And it's in a great location surrounded by employment and educational facilities, high-capacity transit options, and potential future light rail. And it provides a great opportunity to create a heart for the neighborhood with the services, civic uses, and places to hang out. So zooming in a little bit to the site, you can see this is looking south-southwest. There's a variety of multifamily uses immediately adjacent to the site, including Bakerview Apartments to the south there, as well as Madrona Square, which is now under construction. To the left, which is east of the site, there's a mix of duplexes and fourplexes on those properties. And then across 12th to the north is Wiggums Park Place Apartments, as well as the Meadows Apartments. There's a variety of community assets adjacent and near the site, including the large wetlands to the west. Of course, Wiggums Hall Park to the north, and EHA Senior Center to the south there, as well as Hawthorne Elementary, the Boys and Girls Club, and just off the map, Everett City College and Wazoo Extension. And there's also a lot of employment opportunities, including Seattle Children's Clinic, Providence Hospital to the west, again, the Everett City College and Wazoo Everett Extension, And there you can see to the south downtown Everett and Everett Station, and you can see the transit stations there. So Leslie's going to expand more on all this.
Great, thank you. Housing is the first order of business. The magnitude of the problem is really critical, and it's not a future need, it's a now need. So the site is big enough so that we can actually make a significant dent in that need, and that's what we're trying to do, not just with housing, but a community that is serving the people that will live there and the neighborhood too. It's a mixed income, mixed uses. It's a new model. That's our aspiration, is to make a new model for how to deliver the kind of housing that's needed in Everett and the region. Equity is really important, that the Delta has been underserved, but around the edge of the site, there are jobs, education. You can walk from Head Start to, higher education. Needed services, and we can get enough people here to support those services. Transit is there, but it's going to be growing. So there really are a lot of opportunities in this particular neighborhood, especially as it grows in the future. Decarbonization, again, as the site allows us to do things that are different than what you could do in an infill site, that we have opportunities to make a neighborhood that really is a 15-minute neighborhood, that you can walk and bike to the needs that you have every day and not have to drive everywhere. We're looking at ways that we can use sustainable building materials like the CLT, use energy-efficient building methods. Community gardens, connecting to nature. There is a beloved community garden, and this project will expand the community garden. EHA has committed to a really great group of design minds, and it's my privilege to help lead that team. I'm an architect and urban designer, but we have architects with specific typologies. We have landscape architects, engineers, environmental engineers, retail experts, and transportation experts. And so collectively, this group has been responsible for this best development in this region, and it's a brain trust that I think is going to bring the best of this region into this project. The design topics, we're basing the site plan on the master plan and the community input that went into that, and we're refining it. In particular, we're looking at ways to better connect this to the neighborhood. Safe routes to school is really important with the school and the Boys and Girls Club there, the park. There's a slope, so we're looking at best ways to negotiate that with a series of open spaces of different sorts. We're looking at how to make the retail and civic uses successful. So there's a lot of challenges with it, and they're really exciting challenges. The civic and retail uses are something that the neighborhood said that they would like to see more of, and there's just some really interesting discussions going on, looking at bringing in a library, bringing in early childhood education, bringing in services, the idea of a radio station. So there would be enough gravitas of population here to really support some of those uses, to support the coffee shop that people want to hang out at. And it's part of a community benefits package that is really critical to this project. We'll be going through the PDO process and housing, but not only just housing, making a model of a neighborhood that is equitable, walkable, sustainable, and a new model for how neighborhoods like this can be assets. So those are some of the things we're thinking about. We are looking forward to more community meetings with input from folks as we hone in on some of the specific uses and locations, and more discussion with all of you as the project moves forward. So thank you very much.
So regarding next steps, EHA's already spent over a year on engagement with the community on this, but we will be re-engaging with them probably at the start of the year. With this process, and the teams have been very, very busy on making refinements to the master plan that you have probably seen, and will continue to do so and make refinements, perhaps with additional input that comes from the community. And EHA will continue to engage with the civic partners as this process proceeds. And regarding the rest of the PDO process, you could see this is an ambitious schedule that we show here, encompassing 4 different approval processes, starting with the plan development overlay being the big one, and hopefully getting to approval of that in early 2024. The other components are the development agreement. It's going to be an important piece, as well as the environmental impact study, which we're collaborating with staff and getting that started. And we also will need to do a street vacation. So City Council will be approving on 3 of those 4. And of course, with the PDO, that will include Plan Commission recommendation before City Council action.
Very good, thank you. Let's see if we have any questions or comments. Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thank you guys so much for being here. I've been following this for a little while, so it's great to see the pictures and tap into the vision a little bit, so thanks for the presentation. I know that there's a number of housing sites that are there right now, so I was curious about plans to mitigate displacement, or what happens to folks that are there now as it transitions to the new buildings.
We'll let EHA speak to the EHA questions.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Moore. I'm the Director of Development for the Everett Housing Authority. Quick answer to that is we relocated all of the persons living in the former Baker Heights public housing in 2019, so there are no current residents on site.
Thank you, appreciate that. I wanted to give share my excitement I saw a number of trees on the drawings. Nobody's surprised that I'm mentioning that. So thank you for the long list of environmental considerations and the urban tree canopy. And I think that just urban trees are just a great, despite how many blew over this last weekend, trees just provide such an amazing placemaking for the community. So I'm glad to see that. And I would also like I saw a number of pictures that indicated that childcare might be included. So I was hoping you could expand on the record plans for childcare facilities and considerations there.
Yeah, discussions are underway with folks, and I think close to being able to be discussed. Is that fair?
Great, that's all, thanks.
You, Councilmember Schwab.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. My question is once the project is started, is it going to be completed, or is there going to be requirements for some sort of economic requirements, or obviously the need is there? Is the full funding available for the project?
The project will be phased.
It will be phased?
Yeah, it's a lot to do at once. And phasing is part of the consideration of the design, so that the people in the first phase, it's not too bad while the second phase is happening.
I guess my concern is, as we phase, will we build a nice project versus, sometimes they'll build the projects that develop the economic means first, and then the things that are more community desired come last, which we never see because the project takes a long time, so.
That's a great question. So as Leslie mentioned, there will be several phases to the project. We're very early on in the conceptual stage, so we haven't yet worked through the engineering or the architectural work to establish precisely what these phases will be. But as we currently work through kind of the civic and retail functions, as well as kind of the housing functions, the aim is really to try to deliver kind of a civic and retail social fabric alongside a fair amount of housing in the first initial phases, so that we have a civic, retail kind of social core with those combinations, and then follow up with the execution of the following phases. We're definitely looking at 3, 4, potentially 5 different phases starting from maybe 2024, 25, all the way through 2030.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fossey, and then Councilmember Zerlingo, you'll be out.
I appreciate Councilmember Schwab's point on that. I know that there has been some concern in the local surrounding community about, even though being in the conceptual stage, about some of those amenities and things for the community, making sure that those become a reality in addition to the housing. So looking forward as we go forward to making sure that that is a guarantee that's put in there, because I know that there is some exceptional height asks in the middle of this community. And that is also another concern that I've heard from my constituents on that. With regards to that area of the south side of Wiggums Hollow, what is the plan for that field?
At Wiggums Hollow Park?
Yes. It's EHA property.
Yeah.
At the present time, we don't have any plans for Williams Hollow Park. Part of this PDO does not include that particular parcel. We are very interested in having stakeholder conversations about the future of Williams Hollow Park. We understand it's very important to the community and to a lot of stakeholders, but at this time, we don't have any present plans or certainly any conclusions about exactly what is the future use of those parcels to the south of this PDO and this park district.
Okay. What timeline do you have for that?
We don't have a timeline for that.
Would you expect that that would be coming after the decisions are made on?
We would expect that the conversations in Wiggums Hollow Park occur with a variety of stakeholders, with the timeline for that taking place dependent on what the stakeholders' participation in those conversations are and what the final resolution. I think those of us who have been part of certain conversations on that understand that this has been a long time discussion about this particular area, of which we are only one part of that conversation, and so we're hopeful that we can come to some resolution of that conversation in the time to come.
Okay. Just digesting the words that you just put out there in a circle. So I do know that that was a big concern of the community, is the future of Wiggums Hollow and the loss potential of that park. And I agree with a lot of my neighbors when they have expressed that sentiment over the last several years, that the potential for selling that area and not utilizing it for the public space in a very, very future dense area, giving that away or selling it for any sort of development or any of those kinds of concerns. Like, that is a very big thing that I've heard with my community, their concern-wise. So I was just hoping that we'd have a little bit of an idea of the timeline of when that stakeholdering and when kind of we would know a little bit more going forward with that particular area of concern. But it seems like that's still kind of up in the air. What about the potential of the development of the Friendship Garden and any addition to that?
I will defer to Leslie. Who can
Yeah,
comment
we're
on
looking at the site in terms of where stuff goes, and we're not finished yet, but we do want to expand the gardens, and we want them to be in the sunshine. I think if we can do it, it would be nice to have them be an amenity that people can walk through, so that if you don't have a plot there, you can still enjoy going by it. There's some really great examples of that, but we're looking at some different options on how to arrange the open spaces.
That's very good to hear. I know one of kind of the missing elements when we lost all of our neighbors over there and there was evaluation done, all of the questions were being asked of what would be great for this development in this community, and it was being asked of the folks that didn't live there. And I know that back when we did have all of our neighbors and our long-term neighbors over at Baker Heights, that the Friendship Garden was something that was very near and dear and close to their heart. So the potential of expanding that, I think, would be an amazing thing for the current residents that are going to be there, and that input is valuable. Is there any priority being given to the neighbors that were evicted from Baker Heights in those communities of color that we lost out of the Delta neighborhood, as far as placement and offering of residents, either in your Baker Legacy project or any other developments that you have?
That's an EHA question, if you would take that, Jason. You know, the other thing that I think would be wonderful is the rooftops are going to be amazing views. They're great for having gardens up there. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff that could happen up there, too.
So for the affordable subsidized portion of the housing and other housing, market rate housing, former residents of Baker Heights, those with vouchers, will have the option to, come back to the community and lease up units the former residents who, none of them were evicted, they were relocated with vouchers. They won't need to live in the units that will be subsidized, but will have the opportunity to come back to the community and and lease up. We haven't talked about any any preference, but it's a discussion that we can have. But we will reach out to the folks who've moved out so that they can use their vouchers to lease up in the community if that's what they choose.
Shortly after the, I guess, I don't know what to call it, evacuation happened, and we lost a lot of members of color from our community, there was substantial harm done to the Delta neighborhood and the really kind of unique immigrant community that we had there. And we had long-time, like, fixed-income seniors that had been there for a very, very long time. And it was my understanding that you hired an equity role within your ranks, and that role, I forget what his name was, but he met with the Delta neighborhood.
Yeah, Tony Neighbors.
Tony, yes. Is he still with you?
No, he became too popular and as a consultant and left. So.
And so what was his title?
Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Okay. And who is in that role now?
We don't have somebody currently in that role. We
Okay.
haven't been able to recruit somebody.
How long has it been open?
We hired somebody earlier this year, and that person is no longer with us. So we're trying to figure out how to move forward.
Okay. In my previous meetings with the person in that role that was very popular, he assured the neighborhood association that priority was given to those members of our community that were evacuated from the Baker Heights.
Yeah, so we talked about doing specific outreach to the Marshallese community who had many members in Baker Heights, and for historical reasons and cultural reasons prefer to live closer in community rather than spread out. And so we will do that as we move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Zarlingo.
Well, I appreciate Councilmember Schwab and Councilmember Fosse's questions about essentially kind of concurrency. I spent a few hours a couple of weekends ago learning about transit-oriented development, and a lot of what you were describing here were those synergistic elements that work real well together and then really hobble something if they're not there. So it's good to hear that you're paying attention to that. I had a question maybe for you or maybe for Director Wajda. Is this area identified as a transit-oriented development?
I don't know that it specifically is, but transit is growing in the region. And I think the walkability is great. There is a bus stop there now. It's a line that is not the most robust of the lines, but I think that with increased population that there's a likelihood of increased bus service. You can also get to, you got that. You can get to Broadway, or east or west, you can get to some good lines. So hopefully the increase in density will beef up this service, but light rail's coming. So I don't know that it's officially TOD next to a station, but it's definitely within a walk shed.
Okay, that's because I know that those things need to come together, certainly and yes, Director
Yeah, I
Wajda.
concur with all of the above. I'll only mention that Community Transit is doing planning for the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit, which is going to significantly increase the transit service along Broadway, which is a few short blocks from this development.
But as I understand it, the light rail was mentioned, but I don't think that's in the cards near term.
It's a
here.
while.
Yeah.
That would be another.
Sound Transit 4 or
Sound
something,
Transit 4,
yes,
correct.
okay, thank you,
Wait
that's
for
all.
that. Any other questions or comments? And I'll just ask, one of the core needs that we've identified really within our community is sort of the increase of home ownership. Will there be home ownership opportunities in this area, or is this all rental housing that we're talking about?
That's a great question. Yeah.
So we have looked at home ownership opportunities for the Park District. At the moment, most of the opportunities that exist are on the east flank of the site. We're still examining that possibility. The rest of the housing opportunities are dense, kind of multifamily, kind of urban podium type projects that don't suit well to home ownership concepts. So we'll continue to work through that, and hopefully next time we come back here, we can provide a little more information on what we've done in our research and feasibility studies.
Yeah, that will be helpful for us to learn and understand that, and then I probably have something for our planning director. But I'm just curious, with the plan development overlay, it's been a while since I was involved in one of those. York, can you remind me what are the elements and timeline of that? If they're phasing the project, will we see all of the build-out or suggested build-out of the phases at the same time?
That would be part of the agreement. So the plan development overlay is what would allow aspects of the development regulations that go beyond what is currently allowed on the site. So that gives us the latitude to, take account of the special situation there. Development agreement is a contract between the developer and the city that lays out a phasing, the mitigation, and all aspects of the development, and then locks it in for the build-out term, similar to how Riverfront and Waterfront Place were done. So, and this will come before the Planning Commission for recommendation, and then action by the council ultimately. And for that action, you would see the phasing plan and all the mitigation and the fees and all the aspects of the development wrapped up into a large binder.
Okay, and so to address some of my colleagues' concerns about the infrastructure development and sort of the amenities pieces of that, those would all be known at the time that the plan development overlay would come forward for council approval?
Correct.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Vogely.
I just wanted, well, thank you. It looks absolutely lovely. And I want to definitely encourage you to please continue to pursue home ownership possibilities in the multifamily type areas, because what it sounded like I heard was that the east flank, I don't know what that means, but was single family because home ownership isn't good for multifamily. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's what you meant. So I'm just putting that out there that home ownership is great on multifamily as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for being here tonight. It's an exciting project. I'm glad to hear, and we'll look forward to hearing more about this as it unfolds.
Thank you.
Thank you. For final briefing tonight, we have the Everett Station District Alliance summary of actions expected to come to City Council between now and the end of the year. And we have Brock Howell here, who clearly drew the short stick and had to stay through the rest of the meeting.
President Stonecipher,
Yes.
I just want everybody to know that the clock is wrong.
I know. I did know that. I looked at my phone earlier. I was like, wow, time flies. Anyway, this is related to the creation of the Everett Station District Alliance Business Improvement Area. And we have, as I mentioned, Brock Howell here tonight, Director of the Everett Station District Alliance, to give us a little briefing. And we have one person who has signed up to speak on this item as well, so once Brock has, don't let me forget that. Let's get myself in this here. Putting this right in front of me.
There we go. All right. Thank you. Today is actually going to be short. I'm glad to have the short stick today. So I was here a few weeks ago to talk about Everett Station District Alliance's other projects. Today, I get to talk about the business improvement area and the timeline moving forward. And this is just a teaser today. We were here before council in 2019, and council officially adopted a BIA at that time, but we had an amendment to go through and some other processes, and we put it on delay, and I'll explain that in a second. So we're back here today, and I'm going to outline the process between now and the end of the year for hopefully establishing a business improvement area. 3 key points of things that we have focused on and learned over the last few years. One, that this initial version of the BIA should be focused on critical needs, that should be right-sized to the strongest supporters or areas with the strongest supporters, and it should be a place to start and grow from to prove ourselves. So tonight, I'm going to provide what you can expect between now and the end of the year, the difference between the previous effort and this time, and then a summary of what we've heard, the map, budgets, and rates. So real quickly, timeline, providing briefing on the resolutions that will be before council next week that will set up this process. November 16th, so that'll be next week. It will be the adoption of 2 resolutions, which kicks off the process. November 30th will be the full briefing and the first reading, then the second reading, and then on the 14th, the third reading, hearing, and hopefully the vote of council at that time. If all goes well, by the ordinance would specify the start date of the BIA for collection purposes being January 1st. Of course, collections wouldn't happen immediately, services wouldn't happen immediately, that'd take some time. So first, to start the process by state law, there are 2 resolutions that need to be adopted. One, the first one initiates the establishment, and the second expresses the intent to establish. Now, don't tell me why you have to have those 2 separate ones. It's just the way it is. The second one provides a clear notice to the public, and so it's a restatement of the first resolution for the most part, but setting the public hearing date. So to recap real quickly, 2019 to 2020, we had a consultant that helped put together a proposal for a BIA and went through the process, had a 7-0 vote, but there was an amendment to the map, so it needed another hearing, another vote. We reconfirmed support via affidavit. Right at March, we were ready to go forward, and the pandemic hit, and that was not the right time to move forward, so we paused. In 2021, the board of Everett Station District Alliance's Board of Directors extensively discussed whether to pursue forming a BIA. We conducted an online survey of the private property owners. It was the pandemic. And then the ESDA, at the end of the year, their board approved the draft proposal. And that's what I just passed around here today, is the draft proposal, which property owners could sign a petition in support of. We've had lots of one-on-one conversations with property owners this year. We stated at the outfront when we hit 60%, we would notify the city. We did that in June, and we're currently at 68.4% in support is where we're at. So the map is different. We heard loud and clear we need to focus where our strongest supporters are. And so there's 4 areas that could be their own BIAs by themselves, that they have a cogent relationship to that area. And that's northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest along McDougal. I'll talk more about that in the justification for them moving forward. But the plan is to start where there is the strongest support and grow from there in the future if we prove ourselves to the rest of the neighborhood. The other thing is if property owners outside our boundaries want to join, they may do so through contract with Everett Station District Alliance to receive those services. The budget would be $313,000 and $313,000 and $500, and that doesn't count the uncollected assessments that we kind of have to build in. We don't know exactly how many uncollected assessments are coming in, but we have to put in a number because not everybody will pay. Most of the budget is focused on a safe and clean program, which has 2 core components. So this is 2/3 of our budget is focused just on 2 core components. First is daytime neighborhood ambassadors, and second is nighttime patrols. both of which for the initial period would be on contract, minimizing overhead costs in terms of managing the program. So again, the Safe and Clean program would focus on nighttime security patrols and daytime neighborhood safety ambassadors. There'd also be some additional funding for spot things that come up and physical improvements, but a fairly small amount of money. There was also clear support for having a parking program. We are a light industrial neighborhood by and large, and so there's lots of building frontages without sidewalks or improvements, and so the businesses are responsible for their parking. And we've heard in the past that there's a desire to have a uniform parking approach with those areas and helping to enforce that work. There was a lot of support within our survey for doing neighborhood enhancement work. Bringing back the farmers market, surprisingly, was very well supported within our survey. So there's some funding dedicated towards those types of enhancements for the neighborhood. Finally, this is my last slide, is that I just want to emphasize this is an accountable process. We are starting small, proving ourselves, right-sizing it to where our strongest supporters are, and growing from there. It requires renewal after 5 years, similar to the Downtown Everett Association, so there's a time to reassess after 5 years. There will be a ratepayer board directly built into the ordinance, and so there'll be more accountability than what we have with our other BIA. And we'll have performance targets that are built into our deliverables. So those are some of the accountability measures that are built in. And with that, I look forward to seeing you several times over the next month.
Thank you. Let's see if we have any questions or comments. Just clarifying questions at this point, because we do have one public speaker that I want you to be able to comment on that. Okay, let's call our public speaker up next. We have Mark Nysether here.
Good evening. I just want to clarify whether you got my handout in addition to Brock's handout, which Brock ended up with. So, my name's Mark Nysether. I do not live in Everett. I have property in Everett, so I hope that means I can still talk. Anyway, my first thing is I want to thank you for instituting the no sit, no lie ordinance in the greater Smith Street area. I also want to thank you for supporting the tiny hut project that's in that area also. And finally, the third thing I would like to appreciate is the enforcement of the parking down on Smith and the removal of the overnight parking. For many years, the Hewitt to 41st Street areas between Smith and Broadway were a mess with homeless tents, cars, trucks, and trailers everywhere. Theft, vandalism, and damage and graffiti were everywhere. While it's not 100% gone, it probably never will be, it's at least 90% gone. The difference between what it looks like down there on a daily basis today versus 3 years ago is unbelievable. So we have roughly 160,000 square feet of buildings in that area. So, and we've been there ourselves owning those buildings for almost 40 years. So, I mean, we've seen a lot of changes over the years, and the most drastic change has been what's happened in the last 2 years. So I really appreciate what's taken place. We were one of the vocal proponents 3 years ago when Brock and his group came to this council to put their BIA before. There was a number of property owners that were speaking at that time. I'm probably the only one tonight because nobody knew about it. And I just found out about it a couple days ago. So anyway, my question tonight is basically, please don't rush this thing through. You know, there was little notice of anything to the public. I mean, I spoke before. I would have hoped that there was a process where, with something like this comes up again, that they would be able to notify the people that had participated before, but in any event. So the handout that I provided you, I'll go very briefly, is stapled. It's got a police report log that came off of the BIA's website, which you can see from the period of time when it was first taken in 2017 through the end of this year, it's gone down substantially in that area, considerably. And while I could not get the first 4 months off for this year, but I could see it on my screen, it had even gone down more. So that just represents how much change there's been in that neighborhood. The next page is the handout that I think you also got and was on the slide with the map showing the 4 separate little BIA areas that they kind of overlap, along with his budget, which is 72% for keeping the streets safe and clean. They don't need to be safe and clean anymore. They are safe and clean, in my opinion, probably safer and cleaner than some of the other streets in Everett. So then you have your budget. $200,000 of the budget is for that safe and clean part. I can remember almost weekly, if not twice a week, dump trucks and backhoes and everything else down on Smith Street hauling away garbage. There's been shootings, deaths on Smith Street. All of that has gone away. We still have occasional graffiti. We still find needles occasionally in our driveway, but it's limited compared to what it used to be. The next part is their budget, of which, again, I didn't know he was specifically going to be here, but in any event, I wanted to make sure I'm done, right?
If
Sorry.
you can wrap up. Oops.
No. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think, do we have anyone else signed up to speak on this item, Angie?
No, that's all we have.
Okay, thank you. We will open it up now for council comments or questions. We still have Brock here, so. Councilmember Ryan.
Great. I'd love a clarification on what the next steps are.
So the next steps is the adoption of the resolutions next week. This is actually kind of pre-notice right now, this briefing. The resolutions set up the notice requirements. And so that is the notice that there will be a hearing, which is the opportunity for the public comment to happen at that time. It also requires that notice be published in the paper and be sent out 10 days before the public hearing to each property owner by mail. And so that is the notice period that is happening coming up. And then, of course, we'll all have the first, second, and third readings as well. And so basically, every council meeting between now and the 14th, this will be on the agenda. Thank you for your time in making that happen. I will have a full briefing on the 30th as well to answer additional questions.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, I have a few things. I think it's maybe Councilmember Vogely and I might be the only ones here who remember this, and I'm sure the mayor does too. So the last time we went through this process, there was, it was a lot. And I can see that you've reduced the area, which I appreciate that. I would, at some point before we act on this, I'd like to see a comparison map showing the areas that were removed, because I can't remember what all we had going on before. I know it was quite a bit larger, and there were a lot of people removed because they were opposed to the taxation district. Is that correct?
Happy to provide that map. I think we may have removed more supporters than opponents in this process.
Oh, okay.
And so, but we will share the map from previous to upcoming as well, for sure.
Okay, that'd be great. The other, another big question that came up the last time is, and I'll let the city attorney correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, there's a couple ways to impose a business improvement area. One is that the ratepayers by petition request to tax themselves. And then the other process is that the city council actually has the authority just to impose a BIA somewhere if they want to. And I remember the last time we thought we were doing that we thought the area was going through the petition process. And it wasn't until very late in the process that we learned that that wasn't at all the case, that we were actually using the process where the city council imposes the area. So the petitions that were being collected in some ways didn't matter, but they did express support. What process are we using this time?
Yeah, the state law and the process on this make it kind of difficult to do it strictly by petition, because you would have to adopt the legislation as is from the petition. And so to making sure that you get the exact ordinance you want as a city council, and that we also are able to, we've learned some things through our conversations and collecting petitions of small refinements to what the language would be from the petition. We submit the petition that shows the clear intent of the property owners to establish a BIA, but the actual process that you use is to have a new resolution that establishes the council's intent to establish, and then proceed forward from there as if the council is adopting the resolution. So that makes it so that you can have a clean ordinance before you, if that makes sense. Otherwise, you're working off of the petition I just provided you, which I think David would appreciate if there were some adjustments made to it, so.
So then the other issue that came up the last time was that there was in some instances, a very long period of time between the time that, some of the petitioners were discussed the process. They said, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and then the plans changed, and so at the end, some of those people came back and said, I reneged on my support because it's not what they discussed with me the first time. So where are we with I see we've got a list of people that represent 68%, but do we know the timing from when they supported this? I mean, how long has this been?
Yeah,
happening?
We have a packet of petitions with the signed petitions. Yes, so it's been a process over this year to collect them.
Okay.
And we've kept, the resolution of collecting them over that period.
Eventually the same, okay. So then I guess I don't know if I have maybe in this packet or one of them, the list of all the properties that are in there and the ownership of those who will be taxed, who also probably didn't sign the petition. I'd like to see if we can get that list of all the properties that would be included in there, whether they signed or not.
Absolutely, and we've, in drafting the ordinance, we plan to include a list of all the properties directly as a appendix.
Okay, great. And then I saw the budget. It looks like because that was another bone of contention the first time around, was that the budget was obviously a lot larger because the area was bigger. And then there were some of the things that were being funded that I think were were just kind of questionable for some of the people. So has this budget been circulated as you were collecting these petition signatures? Is this information essentially what people saw?
Absolutely, yep. The information hasn't changed in the past year.
Okay, so everybody who's on this saw the same plan that's coming
Yes.
forward
I would,
before us?
I should mention something, and I'll go over it more on the 30th, which is this was a 2022 budget. So we created the proposal and adopted by the ESDA board in December 2021, based off of as if it would be for 2022, and then prorated if it was adopted sometime in 2022. We are using for the rate setting 2022 property values, and then off of that base doing a CPI adjustment. And so 2023 budget will look a little different because of that. And so that we do have a slightly different budget because of the 2022 to 2023 change in time.
Okay.
So, does that make sense?
That makes sense, yeah. That's all I have. Councilmember Zarlingo.
Just one quick question, though. The percentages here, are they reflecting the number of property owners or the percentage of assessed value?
It's a good question. This question kept coming up last time. So there's a lot of different property sizes, right? And so it's based off of the assessed value, the BIA assessment. So that's a combination of land. The assessment is based off of land square footage and market value of the property as the assessor has assessed. And so that's, and then they each have a specific dollar amount that they would pay. And so it's a percentage of all of that combined, if that makes sense. And it's only private property, not public property, which was another piece of the conversation last time.
So it's kind of a weighted combination of square footage and assessed valuation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the city and other government agency land is not included in the.
Not in the calculation, no.
Doesn't look like that. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Any other questions or comments? Thank you for hanging around with us, Brock.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it sounds like we will see you next week,
30th.
the 30th.
Yep.
The
Thank
30th,
you so
yes, I'm
much.
sorry, I'm getting my
Yep.
items confused. That brings us to the end of our agenda. With no additional questions and no executive session, we are adjourned.